Brazil, where Pele is lying in state. The funeral service is due to take place this afternoon. I'm sure Jim Diamond will bring you the flavour of what is said.
LBC News. Weather.
A wet day for London with persistent rain throughout, feeling mild with highs of 12 degrees. Overnight, it'll continue to be mild with lows of 13 and it will be dry as well. On Wednesday, staying dry and cloudy throughout the day with highs of 13 Celsius. Overnight, dry with lows of 11. On Thursday, we'll see continuous cloud, but it'll continue to be mild with highs of 13. Rain returning overnight with lows of 11. On Friday, some brighter spells.
LBC News.
There are lots of little things you can do to save money on your energy bill, like turning your boiler flow temperature down to 60 degrees, swapping to an energy-saving light bulb, switching off unused appliances, dialing down the temperature on your washing machine, closing all of your curtains at night, and if you can, finding and filling drafts. On their own, they may not sound like much, but they all add up and could save you hundreds of pounds. Visit gov.uk/save energy for all of our energy saving tips.
I'm out of office this week and won't have access to email because as soon as I finish writing this, I will be tossing my laptop into a roadside ditch en route to the airport. Regards, Nick.
Take your holiday as seriously as British Airways Holidays take your holiday. At all protected.
Hi Jenny, oh, it's so great to hear from you.
Know that you'll never miss a moment. With Buy Now, Pay Later across our latest technology, including Bluetooth and rechargeable hearing aids, there's no better time to book your free hearing check.
Sure, well, let's chat again soon. Bye.
Book today with the UK's most trusted hearing care brand at bootshearingcare.com. Over 18s only. Buy now, pay in 6 months, 10% deposit, representative APR 12.9%, subject to status, T's and C's apply. To verify, see bootshearingcare.com/info.
Do you worry about your loose and missing teeth, how they look and how they make you feel?
The dentist just said sooner or later they're all going to fall out.
TDC's Smile in a Day dental implants can give you a full set of fixed teeth and a natural looking smile in just one day. We exchange your fixed teeth for a full permanent set after 3 months. Book your consultation. Visit smileinaday.co.uk or call TDC Harley Street on 0203 7334 986.
Want to work in the media? Kickstart your career with Global Academy. Apply now via 10 or 12 at this unique media school. Search Global Academy.
With PensionBee, you can combine, contribute and withdraw from your pension online. Our plans give Mary the freedom to contribute whenever her income allows.
So I've been self-employed for 4 years now. As a self-employed person, being able to make flexible contributions towards my pensions definitely helps.
We're making pensions simple so everyone can look forward to a happy retirement. Be pension confident. Join at pensionbee.com. When investing, capital is at risk.
LBC News. Latest travel, next.
At a time when every penny counts, it's important to invest your money wisely. With Interactive Investor's award-winning ISA and Which recommended pension, you can choose how to invest. And our low, flat monthly fee means you keep more of what you earn. That's why over 400,000 investors already trust Interactive Investor to make their money go further. Invest for less in a world that costs more at ii.co.uk. Trading fees and terms apply. Capital at risk. Investment value can go up or down and you could get back less than you invest.
LBC News. Travel.
Because of the train strike, there is severe disruption across the national rail network. Any trains that are running will finish around 6 o'clock this evening. So South Eastern, they're running a limited service on the Dartford, Sevenoaks and High Speed line via Ashford. It also means that on the Tube, there's no Bakerloo line between Queen's Park and Harrow and Wealdstone. There's also no service on the Metropolitan line between Chalfont and Latham and Chesham. That's because the train's broken down. There are also severe delays on the Central line. On the roads, it's slow in Tower Hamlets. Sutton Street northbound is partly blocked. That's because of an accident at Weigel Road. And there are queues in Enfield on the A10, the Great Cambridge Road going into town. That's because of the roadworks just before Carter Hatch Lane. I'm Dave Goff. Your next update is in 20 minutes here on LBC News.
This This is LBC News.
Let's get the very latest on the government reaction to difficulties on two fronts. The NHS is collapsing around our ears. I'm sure you know somebody in your family who has had an incident where they tried to go to hospital and had to endure the most extraordinarily long wait before they're even admitted or even seen. So let's start with that. Ollie Barrett's been listening in to the briefing for political journalists. What's the government saying, Ollie?
Well, Martin, the Prime Minister's spokesman is not backing away from the characterisation of the NHS being in a very, very difficult spot at the moment, but the government does insist that many of the issues that the NHS is seeing right now are things that the public were warned about by the government after the pandemic. The Prime Minister's spokesman saying, we are providing the NHS with the funding it needs. Also saying we were upfront with the public that we would expect to see things like backlogs and waiting times increase, he said, before they came down, and he was saying that that was because of the challenges presented by the COVID-19 pandemic. The spokesman for the Prime Minister saying we are doing everything possible to increase the number of beds we have available. He was asked whether the Prime Minister himself would be out and about making any visits related to the NHS this week. We were not given any details on that. No details were forthcoming about the Prime Minister's schedule taking in any hospital visits, for example, in the coming days, but he did say that we would be updated in the normal way as and when the Prime Minister's schedule becomes clear for the next few days. There was a lot of questioning from journalists about how the government would respond to calls for more funding for the NHS, given the current issues that are being seen, and the response to that was effectively to say that that extra funding is already going in to the National Health Service. The Prime Minister's spokesman saying this is a priority for the PM, and he did say he's looking at it very carefully to see if there is more we can do. So not ruling out the fact that the government might have to announce some kind of extra funding beyond what has already been committed. And he did also talk about the NHS setting out in the coming weeks so-called recovery plans to try and ease some of the difficulties that are being seen at the moment. He says that they will bring down these numbers when it comes to waiting times, for example, and he said that those recovery plans would be out shortly, but wasn't able to put an actual timeline or an actual date on it.
Just to be clear, though, there's no emergency meetings, there's no sort of Cobra sessions, there's no, as the Lib Dems have asked for, recall of Parliament to deal with all this.
Certainly not that we were told about, no. The Prime Minister's spokesman not ruling out the idea that the Prime Minister might be seeing himself this week in some kind of NHS-related appearances or visits, but nothing that we're being told about yet. I think that we are likely to see the Health Secretary, Steve Barclay, and certainly the government was being pushed on why we aren't seeing more of the Prime Minister and the Health Secretary out there reassuring people at this difficult time, but the Prime Minister's spokesman just reverting back to that line that this is a priority for the PM and that he's focused on it every day, even if that doesn't involve him being seen in front of television cameras.
Well, they've got further strikes in the NHS, and of course they've got strikes throughout the transport sector, particularly the railways this week. What was the government response to those?
Well, one specific response was that the Prime Minister's spokesman was asked about those reports that when it comes to the NHS discussions around pay and industrial action, those reports that the government might be considering, for example, a one-off payment to healthcare workers to try and ease some of the concerns about pay without actually awarding the double-digit pay rises that are being asked for by the nurses' union, for example. The Prime Minister's spokesman, though, saying, I'm not aware of any plans for that, and he repeated the government's position that he believes that the Prime Minister's spokesman, that double-digit inflation rises, as some unions are asking for, would, according to the Prime Minister's spokesman, embed inflation for the longer term. The Prime Minister's spokesman saying that any pay settlements have to be fair across the board to all taxpayers. That takes us back to that idea that Mark Harper was setting out, the Transport Secretary, this morning, that it's not just about the people involved in the pay negotiations and their wages, it's about what that means for the wider economy and what is affordable. And the Prime Minister's spokesman insisting when it comes to double-digit pay rises, we don't think that they are affordable. So not a huge amount of signs coming out of Downing Street today, at least, that the government is prepared to move very much on many of these issues. And when it comes to the railways, those reports overnight from government sources in the newspapers that the government feels that millions of people might be put off using trains in future as a result of the strike action currently underway. The Prime Minister's spokesman would only say in response to that the government thinks this course of action is self-defeating.
Interesting. We still have something of a standoff, don't we, between the rail unions, particularly Mick Lynch, I'm thinking of the RMT, and Mark Harper, the Secretary of State. Both men are accusing one another of being unreasonable and blocking the road to get to a deal. Was there any enlightenment on that front?
Not really, I have to say, not really. One thing that we did ask the Prime Minister's spokesman about was that anti-strike legislation that the government's been talking about for some time to try and reduce the amount of industrial action that is allowed to take place. But the Prime Minister's spokesman couldn't give a timeline on that, just saying that it would come as soon as possible. And you mentioned transport, we've already talked about health, but the Prime Minister's spokesman was also asked about education and the prospect of teachers striking in 2023 and schools having to shut as a result. The Prime Minister's spokesman saying that, of course, the Prime Minister, he said, would like schools to stay open, saying we wouldn't want to see any further disruption to education after the pandemic. But that just gives you another illustration of some of the mounting difficulties that the government has in this regard and is considering as a possibility as we look ahead to the rest of the year.
Ollie Barrett, thank you very much indeed with all the information that was discussed at that briefing for lobby journalists, 27 minutes after midday. I want to focus on the NHS and the difficulties it is facing once again, because we're trying to bring you a picture throughout the United Kingdom. We've had the view from the south of England, we've had the view from the north of England, we've had reporting from Scotland. Let's fill in the picture in Wales. Daniel Bevan is on the line from Cardiff. How's the NHS there dealing with these emergencies, Dan?
Well, Martin, it is a pretty dire picture pretty much wherever you are in Wales at the moment. If you need an ambulance, if you need to go to the A&E for emergency treatment, or indeed even just have a routine operation. Now, Wales's largest health board, that's Betsy Cadwallader, it serves all of North Wales, declared a critical incident yesterday and postponed all non-urgent procedures and appointments at their hospitals today. They do say they expect them to start up again tomorrow, though. And in between Christmas and New Year, we saw three other health boards, namely Swansea Bay and Iron Bevan, which covers Newport and the surrounding areas, and also Hull Dda, which serves most of West Wales, all urge patients not to attend the A&E departments at their hospitals unless you are in a life-threatening situation, if you have a serious illness. And that is all down to seriously high levels of not only COVID but flu as well. We heard a lot in the run-up to Christmas, didn't we, about this double pandemic potentially, but certainly people are seeing, or hospitals are seeing, a lot of patients with either illness. Perhaps they're going in without that particular ailment. They're presenting with different ailments, but then they're testing positive or suffering from flu while they're there, and of course that then prolongs their stay and adds extra pressure onto our hospitals.
Now, the Welsh Government, of course, is led by Labour. The Health Minister, what have they been saying today?
Well, the Welsh Government are very clear that they see this as very much unprecedented pressure. It's a word we've heard a lot of, particularly when it comes to health in the last couple of years. Hearing from the Chief Medical Officer, the most senior doctor in Wales, that's Dr. Frank Atherton, he says he's never seen the service this busy, and it does say quite a lot when he's been in this industry for several decades. But of course, the Welsh Government, they always are saying in these situations they need more money to help not only deal with backlogs, but also with pay disputes as well. And the UK government in this situation are always saying as well that they are giving record funding to the Welsh Government. But if you've been speaking with people on the front line of the health service, as I have throughout this dispute, they say this is not something that you can just throw money at. It's clearly a problem that's not going to change overnight.
So in thinking about that, Daniel, because as you say, you've been talking to people throughout the difficulties here, and we've just had those words via Ollie Barrett for the government basically saying, look, we told you it was going to get worse before it gets better. Is that the sort of situation we're stuck in? There's not much anyone is going to do to move the dial on this one.
Well, absolutely. I mean, we spoke several times from picket lines, didn't we, last month, Martin? And the stories that I was being told were, in perhaps any other normal time, were pretty shocking. But they were telling me, paramedics, nurses, things that were happening every single day. So, for example, paramedics turning up to shifts and taking over from patients that had already been waiting outside of hospitals for 12 hours and, picking up one patient an entire shift. Nurses, for example, who say this is the worst they've ever seen it, that perhaps they should only be, certainly in ICU situations, seeing one patient at a time, and they're having to see 3. So it's certainly something that health workers on the front line are reporting back to us and saying, this is a situation that is just simply not sustainable for any sort of period of time, never mind the foreseeable.
Daniel Bevan reporting from Cardiff. Thank you very much indeed, Daniel. It's 12:31.
This is LBC News.
Everyone will remember that last year we hosted one of the most significant COPs in recent time.
Only the second time that the judge's remarks have been allowed to be broadcast.
Where the news never stops.
The sentence of the court is one of life imprisonment, and the minimum term of imprisonment will be 34 years.
The government seems to be determined to declare a war on the environment.
Listen on Global Player, LBC News.
To bring you another voice on this rail strikes business, shall we? The chief negotiator at Network Rail is Tim Shoveler. We've been speaking to him this morning. He has given us an update on where his organisation has got to in those infamous negotiations with the rail unions.
We made really significant progress in December when we put a new offer on the table that was worth 9% over 2 years, no compulsory redundancies till 2025, and a whole lot of other things that the union had been asking for, including privileged travel. And 2 of the 3 unions accepted that. And we know with some quite high results from our employees who voted for the deal, even though RMT suggested they shouldn't vote for that deal. So we think that we're on the right path here. And that with some clarification, there's an opportunity to resubmit that deal. I think there's a clarification point here. I think as I say, we know that some of our people were asked by the RMT to do a referendum in just 5 days, which wasn't long enough. We'd agreed with them before, expected a 2-week referendum. In 5 days, that meant that some of our employees had to answer a question: are they going to vote for the strike or not? And against a recommendation from the RMT to reject the deal. So we think there's an opportunity to spend a little bit more time going around those questions, understanding the points of concern that perhaps weren't fully understood by some of our staff, re-clarifying those, and then ask them to have the vote again. Absolutely.
Just seeing some more television pictures coming in from the stadium at Sao Paulo, where Pele is lying in state. Preparations now to reduce the number of mourners as the funeral itself is due to begin. He's going to be moved through the streets of Sao Paulo on his way to that funeral. That movement, I think, scheduled in the next 25 minutes, half an hour or so. Andrew Downey is a foreign correspondent based in Brazil, and he told us this is effectively, for Brazilians, a royal funeral.
Pele is known here as the king or rei, and even on the television, people will talk about him. The presenters of the nightly news, they won't just say Pele has passed away. They'll say King Pele has died, and I see that right in front of me now on the far side of the stadium. There's all these banners, one of which quite simply just says "Viva o Rei," long live the king. And there's another banner that says Pele 2 years, another one that has a picture of him in the number 10 shirt. And of course, one of the most famous images of him was from 1969, just after he scored his 1,000th goal. So the stadium is decked out in the Santos colours and in Santos banners.
LBC News 12:34. Prince Harry's accused the royal family of betraying him for keeping silent during attacks on him and his wife by the media. In previews of 2 broadcast interviews, he also says he would like to have a better relationship with his father and brother. That memoir, of course, Spare, is coming out next week. Here's the thoughts of Charles Ray, a former royal correspondent for the Sun newspaper.
every family has at times had fallouts with each other. There have been reconciliations, or there haven't been reconciliations. People have gone to the grave with still dislike towards other members of the family. The difference with the royal family is not only have you got problems with actual family members, you've also got a royal family that has an organisation behind it. You have got people who work for it. You've got the royal courtiers, the so-called men in grey suits, and various other people. Now, these are the people that Harry is accusing of briefing against him. But I mean, Harry saying, "I want my father back, I want my brother back," it's gone about it a very, very strange way.
That's Charles Ray speaking a little bit earlier. More countdown. I don't know if they're going to release more clips from those two interviews. One of them's coming out on Sunday, and I think the American one is broadcast Sunday night into our Monday morning as well. Got some COVID information here from the government. They are now saying that they will set out details shortly about the new rules for travellers entering the UK from China. For instance, from January 5th, travellers from China to England will be required to show a negative COVID-19 test before they leave. And Downing Street also indicating that new rules and details will be set out for travellers from Hong Kong. Both China and Hong Kong, of course, suffering from multiple outbreaks of COVID-19. It's a different strain from the ones that we got used to and were inoculated against. 12:37, we'll have the headlines for you in a couple of minutes.
LBC News. Weather.
A wet day for London with persistent rain throughout, feeling mild with highs of 12 degrees. Overnight, it'll continue to be mild with lows of 13 and it will be dry as well. On Wednesday, staying dry and cloudy throughout the day with highs of 13 Celsius. Overnight, dry with lows of 11. On Thursday, we'll see continuous cloud, but it'll continue to be mild with highs of 13. Rain returning overnight with lows of 11. On Friday, some brighter spells.
LBC News.
Hi there. I'm out of the office this week on holiday. I will be working on a few things while I'm here, namely my French and my flirting. Au revoir, et merci, Millie.
Take your holiday.